Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, welcome. If you are not new here, welcome back. I'm glad to have you here. Thank you for joining me today. Today's video is going to be about Ashlee Martinson, also known as Vamp Chick, who murdered her stepfather and mother when she was only 17 years old in 2015. Warning, viewer discretion is advised. This video or murder case may contain graphic details about sexual assault, blood, murder, and everything in between. I'm not going to go into full depth to not fully disturb you, but just a heads up that descriptions and mentions of such things are going to be included in this murder case. If these are things that you are sensitive to, I do recommend that you click off this video. I will be here next week, or you just tread with caution. You have been warned. And then just to let you know, if you guys hear my fan in the background, or if you hear a hamster running around in his tote, or cage, whatever, out of my control. It's hot as hell. I usually do these videos with the fans off, but then I end up sweating and feeling entirely uncomfortable. And then when my hamster hears me stirring about at like 5 in the morning, he starts running around his cage because he thinks that I'm about to take him out. Yada yada. If you hear any noise in the background, please excuse it. Thank you for bearing with me, and I appreciate your patience and understanding. One more thing. I have a very big opinion on this case, the murder and the victims. So I'm going to do my best to go throughout the story, explain everything, and then save my opinion for the last part of the video. So, you know, for those of you who are just like watching and like just want to like hear about the story, I don't want to like interrupt too much with commentary. So I'm going to go ahead and save that for the last of the video. If you don't care for my opinion, you can just like click off at some point. So just putting that out there. Ashlee Ann Rose Martinson was born on March 6, 1998, and I believe you say it as Peel, Wisconsin. Her mother was Jennifer Ayers, and she did not know of her father, like her biological father, or she just didn't have like a really great relationship with him. He was not in her life and isn't mentioned at all. Now, as far as like Ashlee's personality, I know a lot of you may question like, why am I so interested in getting into the murderers' personalities? Like, I know you guys can understand why I'm into the victims' personalities, but I'm into the murderers like personality because it kind of helps like us understand how they were before these events took place, like what they were like, what could have brought them to commit the crimes that they've committed. You know, it just helps us give like a really good background story and understanding as to like why they did the things that they did. So I know for some of you, you're like, oh, why are you into that? Who cares? I care because it helps put a whole picture out there, as well as like the backgrounds of the victims and like how they were and etc. So the only thing that I had like available to me about who Ashlee Martinson was is her old Pinterest account. And this is a real thing. Like, her Pinterest account still exists, and I went through it, and there, you know, here are some things that I've gathered pretty much. So Ashlee Martinson was like your classic goth / like scene girl, and this was like heavily popular, I want to say in the 2013, maybe 2012. I do remember when I went to middle school and high school, the gothic girl or gothic boy scene culture or whatever was like a big thing. You know, people dressed in all black, they had the heavy makeup, they had like the raccoon hair, the dyed hair, the very I don't know what they called it, but it was like very teased poofy hair with like the long strips coming out in the front, and I'll put some example pictures up so you know what I'm talking about. But this is like a very popular like lifestyle, I guess you could call it. On her Pinterest, she has like a lot of things that pertain to that. You know, there's the bands that you would listen to if you're a part of that lifestyle, like Blood on the Dance Floor, Chris Motionless, even Jeffree Star at the time, who have bad reputations right now, but like that was a part of that like lifestyle or culture. I don't know what to call it. So there's a lot of that on her Pinterest. You know, there's boards that are like committed or dedicated to figures, you know, such as Kat Von D and Ash Costello and people like that who were very popular around that time. And with that lifestyle, with the gothic girl lifestyle. So you know, on her Pinterest, we kind of gather, like, she's just this normal teenage girl who is, like, into the very big goth lifestyle. There's also, like, even Pinterest boards on there that she dedicated to, like, pictures and selfies of her and her artwork. Now, her artwork, after she committed the crimes that she did, a lot of people were like, oh, I should have seen this coming, because her artwork is dark. And the reason I say dark is because I don't think it's really dark, personally. I think they're just like sketchings and drawings that she just kind of doodled. I don't think they have like any severe message behind them that may be related to the crimes that she committed. I think that she was just an artist, and I think she was actually a talented one at that. She did have like these dark images, but I think that it matched like the things that she was into, which was like this gothic, dark kind of stuff, you know, the death metal bands and like skulls and roses and vampires and stuff like that. I mean, she was also an artist by heart, so it's kind of natural for her to like be into very fantasy, very dark sort of stuff, and not even like heavily, just portrayed in her art, you know? I mean, I draw dark shit all the time. You don't look at me like, ooh, she's gonna murder somebody one day, and then if I happen to, they're like, see, it was in the drawings. Like, I think that's just really stupid. And I think what people also don't notice is that she was also like not only drawing this dark stuff, but she also was into drawing anime. And people, of course, after the crime she committed, excluded that. You know, she has like a few drawings of anime, which I think are very, very, very good. Very cute. And, you know, so it just shows like she was just this teenage girl. Ashlee also had this blog where she put a lot of her like short stories, her poetry, and a lot of it was like fiction, fantasy, and I mean, she still uses it to this day. Actually, her now present fiance Kyle will like still post for her. I assume she writes him letters from in prison and sends it to him and has him like post on the blog, but she still uses it. And there's like, yeah, sure, there's gory poetry, like I've gone through it. I don't think it's anything like seriously menacing. I think it's, you know, just your average poetry that's trying to like thrill you or put like a shock in you, but it's not meant to portray the mindset of like a serial killer or something. She's just being expressive. And I think I'm actually going to use one of the posts that she has on her blog to kind of like help us within the story as well. If I were to start anywhere in Ashlee's story, it has to be when she was 8 years old, and on February 3rd, I believe, 2020, is the most like recent blog post she has on that website. She tells a recollection, I can't speak English, she recalls, this is not funny, sorry. I'm laughing at fumbling on my words, not what's happening to these people. Somebody misconstrued that in a comment on one of my videos, and I'm like, I thought I've been clear that each time I have like a laugh, like I'm either laughing at myself for being stupid, or because I'm like nervous and uncomfortable discussing whatever I'm talking about. Because again, most of these stories are about murders and people being tortured and killed, brutally hurt. Like, just want to put that out there. I'm not laughing at what happened to these people. It's horrible. Wouldn't want this to happen to anybody. I'm just like laughing at how I cannot speak proper English. So just putting that out there. Stop coming for me. I'm going to use like parts of this blog post to kind of help kickstart off that beginning of her story. Like the journey of what's going on, what led us up to the present, basically. And I'm going to warn you, I will link her Pinterest, I will link her blog post in the description box if you are curious to go look at them and, you know, do some searching of your own. But I need to warn you that this particular blog post, it's called, I believe it's called, Have You Ever Seen a Ghost? If you go searching for this yourself and you read it, I need to warn you myself that it is gonna fuck you up. Okay, I think that's the best way to put it. I read it, and unless you're used to reading like the memories of sexual assault survivors in semi-detail. I don't want to say she was very detailed, but enough to where I was kind of sitting there like, I was a little traumatized. And I don't want to sound dramatic, but like, I've literally kind of been putting off doing this video just because like I needed to register that. Let me just put it that way. Like it's enough to make you sit there and be like, as if you just stepped in her shoes for a few minutes. You know what I'm saying? So if you're going to go look at it, please, please, please keep in mind and know that I am warning you to be very cautious if you are sensitive to these things, because I was not ready for that. I read it and I was not ready for that. And I sat there and I was like, wow. Yeah, so anyways, I'm not going to be using the very like gruesome details that fucked me up per se, but I'm going to be using it to kind of like help fill in the blanks. And I thought, like, why not use her own words? Ashlee claims, and so have like family members and friends, which surprises me because throughout this story you kind of can't help but think, like, is anybody going to step in and help her when they've seen the signs, like when they know something's going on? But I'm just going to get pissed off thinking about that all over again. But anyways, people like will back her up when she says that she was sexually assaulted when she was only 8 years old. The first time she was sexually assaulted, she was 8 years old, and her rapist was her mother's boyfriend at the time. And in the blog, she says that this boyfriend would take her along with their neighbor slash friend, or either or, and they would take her to like this vacant area. They would torture her. They would take a BB gun, they would shoot her with it, they would break skin, they would make her bleed, they would embarrass her, they would make her belittle her, they would tell her to strip down, get naked, and look at her, you know. And here's what I'm going to get into a quote. So according to Ashlee's recollection in her post, she says, "The man had done this many times. He only liked to look and play with her sex," referring to like having her stripped down and demanding her to remove her clothes. "Even though the girl had started to develop breasts, he didn't like the way they looked, so she always had to have them covered for him. She was only 8. The man then made her turn around. She gritted her teeth in anticipation of the next shots from the gun, which did come. Pop, pop, pop. She could feel the blood drip down her backside. In those moments, she felt that she deserved this. The pain is so much better than the numbness she felt, and when the man finished the clip, he told her to dress and get into his truck, which she does, wiping her tears and blood onto her clothes." So in this post, like, Ashlee's mother's boyfriend is like the one who is referred to as the man, and he would like later on in the post, she would describe him driving them back to their house, and before they get inside, this man would go on to sexually assault her in front of the neighbor, who was gaining some sort of sexual gratification from watching this happen. And that's putting it lightly. In the post, she doesn't put it lightly. So it was really hard to read that. So after he sexually assaulted her, he demands her to get dressed, go inside, and later on that day, she hears her mom come home. You know, she's thinking like her mom's gonna do something. She's gonna tell this guy, I don't know, report him, tell him to get the fuck out, maybe killing him would suffice. But she doesn't do anything. And I think I pulled this next quote from the blog because I think it like helps us understand Ashlee's perspective from 8 years old all the way up until 17 years old, of why her mom didn't do anything, didn't help her, continues not to help her, and why she was continued to be sexually abused by the men that her mom would bring into their lives. So Ashlee says in her post, the reason for her mom not doing anything or defending her was because she knew her mother knew. He raped and beat her too, just not as much anymore, since her mother sent him to her room every night and left her alone with him. Whatever it took to help her mother not get hurt as often. Now, it's not specified, but after some time, Ashlee's mother, Jennifer, left that boyfriend who sexually assaulted Ashlee when she was 8 years old. I've watched a few like interviews and semi-documentaries that like consisted of friends and family being interviewed, and they would say that Ashlee and Jennifer would move around Wisconsin a lot. They would actually move from location to location, back and forth quite a lot. And I believe it had something to do with Jennifer probably to escape this boyfriend or her abusive partners, but it could be something else. However, they finally, hunker down in Field, Wisconsin, or somewhere near there, and Jennifer goes on to meet this gem of a guy named Thomas Ayers. Thomas Ayers, I was able to find a bit of information on him just so we can understand what kind of person he is, and I think you'd be interested to know exactly who he is. Thomas Ayers was, I think, in his 30s when he met Jennifer, and he was a convicted felon for four different things, and I have to read my notes for this because this is just a tad long, but the guy, on 4 separate occasions, okay, let's start with the first one. So in the year 1999, his earliest conviction was pulling off the side of the road, like he was driving and he pulled off to the side of the road to assault a bicyclist for being in the middle of the road. Now listen, bicyclists are hard to drive with, hard to share the road with, but Thomas takes it to a whole other level. So he got out of his car and he grabbed this bicyclist by his wrist, nearly yanking him off of his bike, and he said basically to not be in the middle of the road, otherwise he would severely hurt the guy. And like this group of bicyclists he was with, he just threw threats at him, and I don't think this guy did anything but just was like on his bike, and all of a sudden this angry guy in a truck like gets out, yanks him off his bike, tells him, basically tells him off, get out of the side of the road, don't do that, and if you say anything, I'll follow all of you guys back to your house and I'll hurt everybody that's there, I'll assault them. And he was like, if you tell police that I hit you with my car, I will severely hurt you, I'll hunt you down, all sorts of stuff like that, just throwing threats. And the police were called and he was arrested because there was witnesses that were yeah, this guy just totally said he'd kill this person, just absolutely crazy. Then there was a mention of a DUI in the same year or around the same year. So apparently Thomas likes to get drunk and drive, and there was this one time where he did an illegal U-turn and a cop was behind him, pulled him over, was gonna give him a ticket. But when he noticed Thomas was drunk, he arrested him for a DUI and went to take him in. The problem is that the entire time this police officer was handcuffing Thomas and putting him in the back of the police car, he was cussing at the police officer, threatening him. And when they started to take off, Thomas had actually begun headbutting the plexiglass in the back of the police car that separates the cabin. And so, of course, the police officer had to pull over, intervene, stop Thomas from hurting himself severely, and with head trauma and shit, because he's head banging the glass violently, mind you. And the police officer said that after he'd gotten him to stop, he actually tried to get out of the back seat and headbutt the officer and pose physical threat to this police officer. So he was arrested for that, and then that was put under criminal mischief or harm to an officer of the law sort of conviction. And then after that, so that's 2 things, and I think he had another one with a DUI. We learned that Thomas is a very angry, blackout drunk, but sometimes he doesn't even need alcohol to fuel his tendencies to hurt people. But on August 29th, 2001, around 10 p.m. at night, Thomas was reported for domestic violence against his former wife, not Jennifer, but another woman who was unknown. He had asked her for gas money, and when she had declined to give him money because she didn't have any, actually I think it was specifically him going to ask her for $10 for gas, and she said I only had 5, is it okay? This guy yanked her by the shirt, spit in her face, yelled at her, said, I'm going to eliminate my stress by getting rid of you, dragged her to his truck, threw her in the passenger side seat, and basically took off. And the entire time she's asking him to let her go, she's screaming, and meanwhile he's taking the back of his right hand while he's steering and he's punching her in the chest. All meanwhile This woman is 6 months pregnant with his child. 6 months pregnant, beating the shit out of her. And it wasn't until the next day that that woman went to the hospital that authorities were notified, because medical professionals who were attending to her wounds were like, you're 6 months pregnant, why are you severely bruised on the chest, why are you beat up? She like tried to lie and say something like she tripped or something of that sort, but they obviously knew better, and so they were forced to report their findings to the law enforcement. So they called the police. They told her like, hey, we have this like 6 months pregnant woman in our hospital, and she's like saying that she just tripped and fell, but she has a bunch of bruising on her that was like obviously inflicted from somebody else. So an officer came to interview her, get a statement, and he said that she was clearly nervous to talk about her assailant, and that she had severe bruising on her chest, and that when they found out it was the husband like pulling teeth with her, they finally find out it was Thomas Ayers. They asked her if she wanted to like press charges or report him, and this girl was so deathly scared of him that she didn't come into contact with the police again. She didn't tell them anything. She didn't proceed with the charges at all. So that had to be dropped, which is slightly unfortunate. Saving my opinion for the end. I'm trying here, I really am. But Thomas is a piece of shit, okay? Like exactly 2 months earlier than that, on July of 2001, the same woman, Thomas Ayers' wife, and him were camping, and the woman had reported that they got into an argument about Thomas seeing a 16-year-old girl. Let me say that again. Thomas seeing a 16-year-old girl when he's like in his fucking early to mid 30s at this point. And his approach to not agreeing with what his wife had to say about it was punching her in the face, breaking her glasses, fracturing her nose, and knocking her on the ground before hitting her a few more times, kicking her, and then leaving in a huff. And I think he actually just like abandoned her altogether and left her in this area where they were camping. So yeah, again, she goes to the hospital to get treatment. Her nose is obviously misplaced. I'm sure when you get your glasses broken in your face, there's a few more cuts on there that need to be tended to. And they were like, you tripped? Okay. We're gonna need to report this. And I think at this point she did try to tell them, like, well, my husband punched me, but he didn't mean it, or something like that. And so they were like, okay, well, just to let you know, we have to report this. So again, they put in a report with the police. Somebody comes and gets a statement. And again, she didn't press any charges. Hence, 2 months later, she gets assaulted again while she's 6 months pregnant. So that's the kind of person Thomas Ayers is. And this is the man that Jennifer brings into her life and brings into Ashlee's life. Jennifer went on to marry Thomas. And when they moved in together in Peelfield, Wisconsin, he brought 2 girls with him from his previous marriage, who I believe, it's hard to find the ages of the girls, but I know that they ranged from like the youngest being like 5 years old to 9 years old. So these 2 stepsisters come with Thomas and move in with Jennifer and Ashlee, and then Jennifer and Thomas end up having a child of their own. So bring in a half-sister who would be the youngest in the household, Ashlee being the oldest, and then you have the stepsisters who are like somewhere in the middle. Ashlee, she goes on to like growing really close with these girls. She considers them sisters, not stepsisters, not half-sisters, sisters. She loves them, she cares for them, so much to the point that Thomas would actually use them as leverage of sorts. If Ashlee acted out of line, didn't do as he asked, or his mom, vice versa, he would threaten to torture these girls and hurt them, and he actually has. I'll play some clips from interviews with them with the police. Well, you have these girls saying like he's physically assaulted them when he didn't agree with what they were doing, or when Ashlee was doing something that he didn't like. They even talk about a family dog going missing.
When he spanked you, was it hard or soft?
Hard. There had been abuse going on in the home, even abuse to the mother, abuse to animals at the hands of Thomas.
My dad throw him around.
They talk specifically about a dog. It was irritating Thomas, and he eventually killed the dog.
My dad told me that he shot him, and he fed him to a bear.
And then there was what he'd allegedly done to the children themselves.
He choked me. One time, he grabbed my neck, he choked me, and I started turning different colors.
This guy was a psychopath. Thomas would sexually assault Ashlee almost every night. He would go up to her room at night, tuck her in, give her baths in her younger years, and then after that he would just come into her room at night and he would do unspeakable things to her. It was said at this point that like Jennifer Ayers knew exactly what was going on, except she would enable it, not stop it. And this was coming from Ashlee, and I think even the girls, they would say that Jennifer would never stand up for them. She would never do anything to stop Thomas. In fact, she would encourage it by saying like, oh, why don't you go tuck her in? Or why don't you go give her a bath? Why don't you go see if she's doing this? Like anything to send him up to the room with Ashlee where they would be alone, or she would not be in the house for long, extensive periods at a time. So he was alone with her, you know, like. So it was very apparent that, you know, Thomas was everybody's abuser. He was beating Jennifer, but again, probably not as much because he had Ashlee to take most of that aggression out on, as well as sexually assaulting her, verbally degrading her, and mentally just breaking her down. And with the little girls, because he had Ashlee, again, it was said that they were more like leverage. Like he went to them and hurt them when Ashlee needed to be put in line. Other than that, he left those girls alone. Somewhere around the time that Ashlee had turned 17 years old, she met a boy named Ryan Cisco, who was 22 years old at the time, and they started dating. They developed a relationship with each other, and I think, personally, I think maybe the only reason that Ashlee may have been into Ryan was because he promised a better life. I think it was him or another friend had told Ashlee and like promised her that they would be able to have a place for her where she could run away to, so she could move out of that awful environment with Thomas and all of them. And when Thomas and Jennifer basically found out about Ryan, they actually went to Ashlee and they were trying to give her parenting on how she shouldn't be seeing a 22-year-old man when she's 17 years old. And I think that out of all the times that you're parenting, your good parenting skills, your good conscience is going to kick in, is when your stepdaughter, your daughter is dating a 22-year-old because she's 17, but not when she's being sexually assaulted, not when she's being verbally degraded and just tortured on all levels, all aspects. Like, no, it's not going to kick in then. It's going to kick in when we've got a pedo threatening our victim, you know, the person you look at as a piece of flesh that you can just do as you please with, right? Like, I'm pretty sure that's why it was an issue. Thomas was your classic abuser. He was a classic controller. Ashlee was only allowed outside of the house to go to work and school, and if she exceeded time at any of those places, when she came home, he would beat her for taking like an extra couple hours or minutes at work or staying at school to possibly not have to come home to the fucking nightmare she had at home. He would beat her. So it's like, yeah, a man comes in the picture, now you're starting to feel a little threatened, right? Because you want to be that only figure in her life because you're a sick person. I can't. Text messages between Ryan and Ashlee would confirm the abuse that's going on at home. Ashlee would text Ryan things like, oh, I just woke up to my mom, you know, my stepfather beating my mom and stuff like that, and like saying how she wants to get out of here. She doesn't want to be here anymore and stuff like that. Oh, and then of course Ashlee's plans to like get out of that toxic environment were interrupted because when Thomas kind of like got a whiff of her, you know, planning to move on and leave them, he would again threaten the livelihood and well-being of Jennifer, the girls, and this of course would make Ashlee conform because she didn't want to feel responsible for something happening to those people who she loved and still had cared for, you know. So she would conform and she'd be like, okay, I'm not gonna leave, I'll stay here. So she ended up staying there, and at that point, you know, she felt helpless. She didn't have an escape anymore. She didn't have a plan. She felt like a prisoner. And when you have from 8 years old to 17, when you have such a long life of abuse and your mother like bringing in these assholes to sexually abuse you and verbally degrade you and mentally just tear you apart, like it just gets to you. And obviously, like, that's kind of like a no-brainer, but like nobody was helping her. Again, friends and family would say that they kind of got the feeling something was going on, but did they do anything? No. She was a young child who was subjected to such awful, awful treatment. And when you're growing up and you're developing, you need people who are going to love and protect you so you can just nurture, you can just grow and be able to be a child. But she wasn't. She lived a life long of fear and just enduring all of that. Next thing that is to happen is, even though Thomas was a convicted felon, or for like 4 things, including domestic violence, sexual abuse, and all of that stuff, even burglary, which I wasn't even able to find any information on that, but he was said to have been arrested for burglary, and he wasn't allowed to have any firearms because of his history with the law. However, did that stop him? No. This guy had guns lying around the house, and it was even said that they were exposed in the house. Like, they were just lying around. They weren't concealed. They weren't kept in an armory of some sort, or like a locker or a vault. They were inches from the children when they're like in their rooms. They're just lying around. So Ashlee, when Thomas wasn't home, and it was just like Jennifer and the girls, she took one of his shotguns that were like only a few feet from her bedroom, and she walked into her room, closed the door, and she was preparing to kill herself. She was about to commit suicide. This girl sat on her bed and she thought about how she was never going to escape this place, and suicide became the only option to really escape what she was going through. Things took a turn for a different outcome. Thomas came home within the minutes that Ashlee was about to make this decision, and he asked Jennifer where Ashlee was. They had just gotten into that fight about Ryan, or another one possibly, and he was about to storm up there and possibly beat her into submission. Jennifer tells him she's in her bedroom. He stomps up the stairs, gets to her bedroom door, bangs on it, and in that moment, Ashlee panics. All of the moments that he has hurt her, which in whatever way it would be out of the 3, sexually assaulting her, verbally, mentally, out of all the times that he's hurt her, she just goes into a panic. She's scared of this man. She is just a teenage girl, and he's like at this point like a almost like 40-year-old or something, and he's bigger than her, he's stronger than her, he has proven to be the dominant person. She goes into a panic. She's also even more frightened that if he opens the door, he's going to see her with this shotgun, one of his prized possessions that he's not supposed to have, but he does. And she's scared that if he opens the door and sees her with this, he's going to kill her. Like, I guess touching the guns was like a no-no because those are like his babies. He should just put them away, but I'm not justifying his actions, because in general, you shouldn't have them. You've been convicted for 4 crimes. Wow. But anyways, she kind of just goes into this frenzy. I have no other way of explaining it. I mean, like, when you have just that genuine fear of somebody like being near you or coming to you or hurting you, like, that just kicks in. It gets your adrenaline going. And I've been there. When you're in that state of mind, the only worry you have is about surviving. That's the best way to put it. And she goes to the bedroom door. It's one of them opens it. She kicks it open. He kicks it open. Ashlee stands there, and before Thomas can react, she pulls the trigger. She shoots him in the neck. He staggers back against the wall, and he falls on the floor. He's still alive at this point, and because Ashlee's scared of him harming her, she puts the gun to his head and she pulls the trigger, killing him by blasting a shot to his temple. At this point, she drops the gun. She realizes what she's done. She's kind of just in this like state of panic. She doesn't even know what she's doing. She's just reacting. She's not thinking. And she goes down the stairs and meets her mom at the first landing. Now, Ashlee says that at this moment she was like thinking her mom would have like solace for her. And yeah, you would think that after being abused by this man for years, and including the mother and the daughters, that you would think as a mom, this guy's dead. And Jennifer runs past her on the stairs too, and she's like, you know, first goes to aid Thomas, realizes he's dead, goes back down the stairs. At some point, she picks up a decorative knife on display in the house, meets Ashlee on the stairs, maybe already has it, and Ashlee is thinking like, you know, her mom might be like, we're free, you know, like we're rid of this guy, we're rid of the man who has been beating us constantly, hurting us, you know, just taking away like everything from us. And no, instead Jennifer takes this knife and she stabs Ashlee. She stabs Ashlee, and at this point there's like marks on Ashlee's arms from like defending herself. She's trying to stop her mom, and it gets to the point where she realizes her mother is indeed trying to kill her. You know, her mom isn't trying to like get her off, like thinks she's like a maniac and just trying to subdue her. Like, no, her mom has decided that she's going to kill her own daughter. So Ashlee wrestles her mother for the knife. She gets the knife at some point. Ashlee even says herself, like, she blacks out. She's so angry, she blacks out. And you can only imagine, from you're being abused since you're 8 years old, nobody to protect you or defend you. The one person who's supposed to do that for you is your mother, and she doesn't even do that for you. So you're abused all up until you're 17 years old, and you just snap from having that your whole life, knowing nothing but that, getting tired of it, feeling trapped, about to kill yourself, and then you just panic because the threat is right there. And now your mother, who is supposed to have your back, who is supposed to help you, confirms that she could care fucking less about you, and that she really was aiding these men in raping her daughter and hurting her in every way possible by taking a knife and stabbing her. Not, oh my God, we're free, I'm so sorry, let's get out of here. Stabs her daughter. Doesn't help her, doesn't say, honey, it's all right. Stabs her. So of course, Ashlee goes into like a blackout rage and she stabs her mother 37 times. At one point, Jennifer's screaming for one of the stepsisters to help her, but the girl just comes to the the staircase and is just staring in shock, like she doesn't know what's going on. She doesn't know what just happened. And Ashlee at one point like has her mother on the floor wounded and tells the girls to go far away from the stairs, go somewhere in the house where they're not going to see what's going on. And the girls later on recall that at one point they did as Ashlee asked, and at one point they remember hearing Jennifer's screams eventually stop. After that, Ashlee, she found the girls. I believe she put them in this bedroom with food and water, and she took a wire, closed the door, and like tied it shut. I'm not sure what she tied it to, but she tied it shut with like string or wire. After that, she went to change her clothes, take a shower, wash all the blood off of her, and she called Ryan to come pick her up.
They were going to stay with an aunt in Tennessee and more or less start a new life.
They made it as far as Indiana.
Driver, roll down the driver window.
With guns drawn.
Walk backwards. Keep walking. Keep walking.
Police take their prime suspect and possible accomplice down without incident. But they don't necessarily find the faces of evil they were expecting.
You know what all this is in reference to?
You do.
Kind of have an idea?
I'm assuming for the murder.
You what?
I'm assuming for what you guys are calling the murder.
Yeah, for the investigation of that.
I didn't mean to kill her.
March 7th, 2015 is when the killing happened, and March 8th, 2015 is the day that the girls actually came out of the bedroom. They said the reason they stayed in there for a whole day was because they were fearsome that Ashlee was still in the house and might hurt them. When they realized she was gone, they left the bedroom and they attempted to call 911 from the house phone. Why did I genuinely just freak out right now? Talking about this has got me on edge, y'all. Okay. Anyway, so they call 911 and the phone call is like a little like patchy. Like at first the dispatcher is like, hello? Like, is anybody there? Because I think these girls obviously don't know how to use a phone. So there's a lot of like picking up and like hearing the phone kind of clashing. Like they're trying to get the phone and like talk. And obviously it's children. They realize it's children, and the phone call isn't available to me. I wish I could share it with you guys. There's a tiny clip from, I believe, Crime News Daily. I'll share it here and credit them. I think a lot of my clips are going to be from them. So, you know, I believe at some point like the 911 dispatcher works with the children to like figure out where they are. They find the kids. Not much later, they're pulled over on their way to Ryan Sisco's family, and Ashlee is calmly talking with a police officer. They take her in for questioning, and at first, you know, she tells the detectives and like the interviewers like, oh, you know, my mom killed him. You know, she said that Jennifer was the one who took the shotgun, killed Thomas, and Ashlee found her mother standing over Thomas's body, and when she went to get the gun from her, things became violent, and her mother like tried to stab her with a knife, and she ended up having to kill her mom to stop her by stabbing her to death. And then she left the girls because she was fearsome of what people would think, and so on. When they interviewed the stepsisters, their statements contradicted what Ashlee had said about what happened. The girls, each individually on their own without talking to one another, had basically told police the truth of what actually happened. One of the girls recall like their mother calling them to the stairs, seeing Ashlee on top of her, stabbing her. The girl even said that her mom hadn't shoot Thomas because they were all downstairs with their mother when the shots went off, and they recall Jennifer saying, holy fuck, what was that? Or sorry, holy shit, what was that? And running up the stairs to investigate. Ashlee was sentenced to prison for 23 years in prison, along with 17 years of supervision in June. She's detained in, I'm sorry if I'm not saying this correctly, she's detained in Taycheedah Correctional Institution. I'll put it on the screen because it's like a little difficult to pronounce. But yeah, she was originally charged as an adult with 2 accounts of first-degree intentional homicide and false imprisonment. She later pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity, but she accepted the plea deal of second-degree murder in March 2016 and was sentenced to 23 years in prison, along with 17 years supervision in June. And just to clear things up, if you guys are wondering what happened to Ryan, so the guy obviously was going to be convicted for, you know, dating an underage minor, because he's 22 and Ashlee was 17, but he was pardoned for his crimes, basically given amnesty if he had promised to comply with the investigation and tell them everything they needed to know. However, the only thing that Ryan was pretty much useless. Like, the only information they really got from him and needed was just the confirmation that abuse was going on at the house, because they have like records of dating way back of Ashlee talking about how like Thomas would hurt her or do certain things, and Ryan just comforting her and so on. So he was excused and they're no longer dating. Ashlee, I don't know what's going on with her case right now. I mean, on her blog, her and her fiance talk about justice and her like eventually coming out of prison and being able to just live her life and move on and be normal. Here's the portion where I'm going to get into my opinion. I'm prepared to get some backlash on this. That's fine. I've accepted it. Because people are not going to agree, because people have been killed here. I think the people that were murdered here, Jennifer and Thomas, I'm not saying they deserved it, but I'm not saying they deserved it. Like, let's just say if a man sexually assaulted me, I'd probably want to kill him. And if he sexually assaulted me obviously without my consent and degrading me and did it several times over the course of my life, it would make me want to rip his heart out. Maybe his throat, maybe his eyeballs. I think people who sexually assault others, pedophiles, everything in that category, they don't have any value for life. They don't have any value for human life. They don't care about the consequences of their actions. They don't care about how, if they do this, how it affects the other person. They could fucking care less. And I personally feel like if somebody takes justice into their own hands and they end them, I don't feel bad. I really don't. I'm trying to put that as lightly as possible, but I know it's still coming off harsh and it probably sounds wrong, but like as a woman, having to like fear walking down the street by myself, including in the dark, even in the fucking daylight, and not being able to walk around without pepper spray or some sort of self-defense baton or item is because of these reasons. Is because women, horrible things can happen, and a sexual assault is not a joke. It's not something you just like easily recover from. Like, it could take years to get back to yourself and recover from that and just move past that. It's a lot of healing, and the reason it's a lot of healing is because the initial act is devastating. It's just, it takes your dignity, it takes everything from you, and I don't feel bad that she killed him. In fact, given his history, if this guy was still alive to this day, he'd probably still be hurting Jennifer. Those stepsisters, that half-sister, would probably grow up in a household where they would replace Ashlee at some point, or be with Ashlee at some point, as far as him sexually assaulting them and touching them, doing all sorts of shit to them. Like, you really think he's gonna stop there? No. He started from here, assaulting his former wife, and then moved on to doing that. The only reason he's not doing anything right now is because she took his life. That's that. And for Jennifer, listen. Oh my God. I'm probably, I don't know if canceled is the right word, because I'm barely a channel on this platform. But Jennifer, on the other hand, I understand to a certain point it's hard to leave a toxic relationship. I understand. I've had my ass corrected on that plenty of times, because personally, I don't take shit from nobody. And if somebody punched me in the face, I'd be out the door. It's not going to happen a second time. It's not going to happen a third time. But I know that it can be hard for other people to move on, to get out of those situations. And it could be for other circumstances, other things within the situation holding them there. However, if I, and personally speaking, if I were Jennifer, if my daughter was raped, or sexually assaulted, because this is probably going to get taken down. If my daughter were sexually assaulted and she was touched like that, if she was hurt like that, your ass would be grass. At a certain point, you gotta start making a plan. You've gotta start getting you and your children out of there. Okay? You've got to start setting aside a place for you can go that the abuser doesn't know about. You need to reach out to police. You need to press charges. You got to do whatever you can do that is available to you, because at a certain point, enough is enough. I think also the fact that she wasn't making plans to get out of there, or showing any attempt to, but instead was instigating it, and was even said to send those men up there with her daughter or have them be alone, is just like, in the fact that she ran to Thomas's aid and then tried to kill her own daughter for killing the abuser when she's clearly been the victim her whole life is just like enough for me. That says enough for me. That says to me that she can care fucking less about her daughter, and that the only person who was important to her was Thomas, who did not deserve anybody's love, anybody's care, anybody's attention. Like, I'm sorry, she said he sexually assaulted your daughter, but that's the guy you're going to defend, not your children, not yourself, but this guy. Yeah, so that's my opinion. I think, of course, Ashlee should be reprimanded for her actions. I don't even know. Like, I think there should be some sort of, I don't want to say punishment, but I think the girl definitely needs help, obviously. I think that years of torture, enduring sexual assault and all of that stuff has really messed her up. I mean, even experts went on to say that they diagnosed her with severe depression and struggling with post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, because of what happened to her. And when things like that happen to you, obviously when you don't address them, you don't see a specialist, it sits with you. It's turmoil. It's there with you forever. And if you're not working through it, of course it's going to stack up with everything else and you're going to snap. That's how it works. So, I mean, obviously it's not on her because her so-called parents who were supposed to love and protect her didn't get her that help, and obviously we're not abusing her. So it's hard. Yeah, I think she, if anything, should be not in jail, but put under strict supervision and put in a home where she's safe and people will take care of her and love her. And, I wish they would just monitor her mental health and just make sure she's okay to come back into society. Because obviously we all know by now what is done onto you, you can most likely pass on to others through yourself. If you have a lifetime of a lifetime of trauma and abuse, if you don't work through that, you can most likely do it yourself. You could do it onto others yourself. You can inflict what happened to you onto others if you don't work through it. So that's my take on it. I could literally blab about this for hours. Ashlee, ever since she's been in prison, she says that she's the happiest and safest she's ever felt in her whole life. Which, if that doesn't say anything, I don't know what the fuck will. She's earned her high school diploma. She finished. She graduated in prison. I almost forgot to mention that they did attempt to reduce Ashlee's sentence in June 2017, but Judge Michael Bloom, he denied the motion in September because, I have to read my notes, but the lawyer said the defendant was incapable of making a rational choice due to her living conditions. So they were saying Ashlee wasn't able to make a rational choice because of her living conditions, because of the abuse and everything going on and all the torment placed towards her. And the judge denied the motion because he was like, yeah, well, she wasn't being hurt at that moment, so it's not a reason for her to defend herself, which I thought was really fucking ignorant because, are you kidding me? Yeah, she wasn't being hurt in the moment, but what about since she was 8 years old up until that point? I'm sorry, did she have to be sexually assaulted in that moment or hurt to defend herself against a man who is known to abuse her? Who knows what he was coming up to her bedroom for if not to talk about Ryan? What if he was coming to hurt her? Did he need to lay a punch again out of thousands of times he's probably done that just so she could have a right to shoot him? I thought that was ridiculous. So yeah, he's really trying to keep her in prison here. I am going to provide my resources, my information down in my description box below. So if you want to fact check me, you can. I will include her Pinterest, so if you want to take a look at it, you can. I will include her blog, so if you want to take a look at it, you can. I will also be including a petition in the description box down below. This petition is strictly to help Ashlee shorten her prison sentences or get out of jail entirely. If you want to help her out and if you want to sign that petition, it's down there, and it's for you to click on. It's for you to take a look. And if you do click on it, I'd recommend reading the comment section. There's a lot of friends of Ashlee's and family members of Ashlee's in those comments advocating for her, saying what a wonderful person she was or is, and was just tainted by this horrible abuse she's been subjected to, and that it caused her to do something bad, you know. So it'll be down there for you. If you take a look, thank you. In general, thank you for joining me today on this video. It's a different video for me. I don't usually subject my opinion, I keep saying subject. Put my opinion in my videos. Usually it's a light commentary here and there. But this one I just feel really strongly about. I've really been sitting on it for a week. I really have, about just my opinion, but also like, this girl just she's a good person. She was just dealt a shitty hand. Somebody said that once, and I think it's just well put. She's a good person. She was just dealt a shitty hand, and I don't think she deserves to be imprisoned for life, like as long as she has, just because she was defending herself against those who, again, were abusing her, and should be protecting and loving her, but we're doing quite the opposite. Thank you for joining me on today's video. I appreciate you being here. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up on the like button down below, and please make sure to subscribe because I have more content like this coming your way. And yeah, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you. Stay safe, have a great day, and I will see you in the next one.